The following content has been provided by RWTH Aachen University.
Visibility and feedback. Some examples show you that you can mess up the usability by making something invisible. For example, this is my coffee maker that I have at home, and it's great. I love it. But the on-off switch, every time a guest comes around, they have trouble turning it on because the on-off switch is sort of hidden at the back of the device, and that's something you just don't expect. So that's where the designer said, the on-off switch, that's an ugly thing, and I'm going to put it somewhere else. And that doesn't make a lot of sense from a first-time usability standpoint. Now, if I'm the only person using it all the time, not a big deal. I quickly learn that the switch is there, and I won't forget where it is. But again, first-time usage, that's more of a struggle. Another example of systems that had a really hard time, VCRs, like I said, they're really a sad example of technology because when you had VCRs that were programmable, for a long time you had to program them, but there was just this kind of like 7-segment display on the VCR, and you had to type in like weird things to program the start and the end time of your recording. Very messy. And then at some point they discovered, we can actually put the information about programming on the TV, right? So that made them much more useful. But then, digital downloadable movies came and VCRs went out the door. A good design, a good display is always a great solution to improve the visibility. So if you want to provide good feedback and you have a chance of putting a display on something, that's probably a good idea because it increases the way that you can provide feedback, the detail you can provide. You can explain what's going on rather than just having a blinking LED. You can have a little text field that says what's going on, and that often increases usability. And that becomes very feasible as technology is progressing, right? Putting displays on stuff. I mean, I've seen toasters with an LCD display on them. Now, you might question whether that's useful, but it's happening. Or another example of visibility and things like that, people have, designers have moved USB ports to the front of devices from the back of PC towers in the old days because they realized, people really want to see these things and be able to have direct access to them. Little bonus feature for the car aficionados here. This was a car, the Alpha 156, presented many years ago. Is there anything wrong with this car? Yeah? The back door doesn't seem to open, right? There's no handle. Well, it turns out the handle is actually there, but it's in the window. It's right up there. Okay? That's an interesting case study. One of our students, Conrad, sent us this picture. He was a car fan. And let's think about this for a moment. Scenario A. You buy this car because you like it looks cool, you like the fancy new handle there, you bring it home, your kids walk up to the car like, Dad, I can't get in, there's no handle. You're like, no, wait, no, it's in the window, you got to open it like this. They're like, oh, that's stupid, but okay. So then your family has learned how to use that car. So far, so good. Scenario 2, you're driving with this car, you're picking up a friend. You're going for the movie theater. You're a bit late. He's going to come out of his apartment. There's no parking there, so you got to stop in the street real quick. And he's the third person to get in the car, so the front seats are already taken. So he rushes up to the car. He sees that he needs to get into the back. Behind you, the line 33 bus service is approaching, and we know that these bus drivers, they have no remorse, right? They will just crush you. So you're getting nervous. Like, get in the car, like in a good, movie, and he's like, yeah, I'd like to, but there's no handle. Like, no, you got to use the window. The window, what do you mean? So, there's going to be a little bit of a struggle, right? Because we're now facing a first-time usability scenario of that other guy trying to get into your car under a stressy environment. That's a little harder. So that would probably be where you're like, maybe that wasn't such a great idea with this Alpha. So then, scenario 3, I don't know, you lose your job, you become a taxi driver, or maybe you were a taxi driver all the time. So you say, I'm going to use my Alfa Romeo, my Alpha 156 as my taxi. Now, every day you're going to have passengers trying to get into the back seat of your car and saying, there is no handle. at that point, it's becoming basically a forbidding design error, right? If you only have, all the time, have first-time users trying to use this interface, it's going to be a huge mess. Not because the handle in the windshield is inherently bad from a technical point of view. It might actually be wonderful, from an ergonomics point of view. Might work better than the other handle. I don't know. But the point is that there is a very, very high level of expectation and conformity in where those door handles are expected to be. And if you change that in this sort of fairly drastic way, you're messing with everybody's learned model of how car doors work. So there better have to be a very, very, very good reason for doing that, because you are creating a very high price tag on usability by making that design choice. OK, feedback. I can't talk about feedback without talking about one of my favorite topics in this, which I'd call feedforward. It's a kind of a weird name for it, but I think it's important. Who here has tried typing a text message without looking at their smartphone screen? OK, did that work great? Not so much, right? What's the big problem? You don't feel your keys, right? You can't actually sense the keys. Now back to those, when you do this on your laptop, not a big deal, right? Once we've learned, as we know now, the layout of the keyboard, we can kind of type, in a kind of like a half-ass sort of eyes-free fashion. But on your smartphone, since you cannot feel your keys, there is nothing that tells you where you're typing until you actually push down. And even if the system then gives you a little tuck, through its whatever force feedback mechanism or a little speaker or a little click, all that is feedback. It's not feed forward. You were not able to actually sense the right operation before doing it. And that's why you could say feed forward is to the execution in the 7 stages of action what feedback is to the evaluation. Feedback is a necessary prerequisite for evaluating a scenario, something that I just did. Feed forward is necessary to be able to confidently and reliably execute. It uses signifiers, constraints, and mappings. It's visual. It's basically telling you. It's kind of like affordances, telling you where things are. But it's also haptic. The example of feeling typing ice-free on an on-screen keyboard, I think, gives you a good example of this. And actually, this is interesting when you look at the latest version of iPhones, for example, introducing this force touch thing. That's actually bringing back an extra level of touch state that could allow you to provide feed forward again in a certain way. Because you now have another level to add this sort of hovering state that we have with the mouse.
This content was provided by RWTH Aachen University.